Supergroup Amoebozoa is defined by its use of amoeboid movement. And to remind you, amoeboid movement is when a cell can extend a structure called a pseudopod. So this is the pseudopod. Now this is a thick pseudopod, not a phyllopseudopod that we saw in the members of Rhizaria. Sorry. So it's a thicker pseudopod and is used for movement. And so it squeezes the cytosol into that pseudopod, and then the cell catches up with that. And so it creates a movement in the direction of wherever the pseudopod went. And so this is a micrograph of an amoeba. So this is a little more complex. It's got multiple pseudopods. And so whichever pseudopod kind of wins out will be the direction that the cell goes. And so that gives them kind of a characteristic irregular shape. Their shape is always changing because they're making these pseudopods. A couple of examples of amoebas that you may have heard of. Entamoeba histolytica causes an intestinal illness. And then the one that tends to catch the eye in the news is sometimes called the brain-eating amoeba. Its scientific name is Naegleria fowleri. This is not present in Colorado, so let me just be clear there. But it can be present in warm equatorial water. So in the U.S., this is places like Florida or Louisiana, which are the cases that I've heard of. And so if there's water that doesn't freeze, that remains warm all year, it can have this amoeba growing in it. And so normally this isn't an issue because we don't typically get these into our brains. But what can happen is if somebody inhales the water into their nose and it gets into their sinuses, it has a path up into the brain. And so one famous case was in Louisiana where the person had used unsterilized water for a neti pot. A neti pot is also called a sinus cleaning pot. And so it's like this little pot that it looks like a teapot, but you put water into it and then you turn your head and you pour it in one side of your nose and it will go up your nose and drain out the other side. And you're supposed to use sterile water because there is the risk of it coming in contact and getting into these sensitive areas of your sinuses. And this person had used unsterilized water, and by really bad luck, there was a brain-eating amoeba in the water that they used in there, that he used in his neti pot. And it got into his brain and actually killed him. So something that's, again, a concern in areas where this is endemic. All right, Supergroup Opishtokonta. Supergroup Opishtokonta is another one that's really just a small number of protists, but actually a huge supergroup. So Supergroup Opishtokonta includes kingdom fungi and kingdom Animalia, which have an important trait of multicellularity, but this supergroup also includes Nuclearia and the choanoflagellate, so choanomonada, though we tend to use in this class the term choanoflagellate more. So choanoflagellates. There we go. For some reason I can't spell when I'm doing this. Okay, so choanoflagellates. So these are the choanoflagellates right here. So these are included here because they are the closest protist relatives of animals and fungi. So these are the protist relatives of fungi. These are the protist relatives of animals. We'll take a little bit of a closer look at the choanoflagellates here because they'll be interesting to us later on as well. So the choanoflagellates get their name, choano, is referencing this collar of tentacles. They also have a flagellum. So that's where the flagellate part. So there's two parts to their name, choano and flagellate. The flagellate part is for this single flagellum here, and then the choano part is referencing this crown or collar of tentacles. And this is important for the way that they can feed. They'll actually use the flagellum to create a current, and that can get other cells into this collar of tentacles. And again, the key thing that's interesting about the choanoflagellates is that they're the modern protist most related to the common ancestor of animals. And we'll see this relationship really dramatically when we look at sponges, which are the earliest animals. So we will be able to see the relationship between sponge cells and the choanoflagellate protist ancestors. So we're going to talk a lot more about supergroup Opisthokonta when we talk about animals and fungi. And this is just a brief introduction to the choanoflagellates in particular, our closest relatives to animals.